Good morning, all. A quiet overnight in the markets right now, as the markets seem very much primed for the US CPI number. It's kind of feeling more and more like a horse race, isn't it? The markets this time where it's kind of the ultimate herd mentality. What we're seeing, we had this time last week. It was the end of the world. Markets had collapsed, and we've come all the way back almost to record highs of many of the equity markets. Ahead today, we have the US CPI number at 8:30 Eastern Time, and then at 10 o'clock, we have the consumer sentiment number out of Michigan University. Not just the consumer sentiment numbers, what we're going to be watching, but also the 5-year inflation expectations and the immediate inflation expectations. And that's out of their poll, which is what consumers are thinking about that. We then have a Cleveland CPI number out at 11 o'clock. So lots of inflation talk. The end of the day, we're going to have the Baker Hughes drilling reports, which will give us the oil rig count for oil and natural gas in North America. And then finally, at the end of the day, we're going to get our US budget, which is always, in these day and age, how big can it get kind of mentality. So that comes out at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Market remembers thin. It's 2 weeks into till Christmas. So much of Europe, Australia in particular, the desks are pretty thin. So that affects oil and commodities. Overnight, we have fair value is 11, a positive of 11 with the futures. The 10-year note is 1.52%. The dollar yen is up a tad. Euro is down a tad. The theme has been a stronger US dollar overnight, which you would expect when you've got a hot CPI number, meaning hot interest rate pressure, which affects the forwards out the curve. As far as overseas markets go, 1 second here. We have the FTSE barely up over in England. The Euro stock's barely up. As you can see, everything's kind of waiting. The big movers overnight were Bitcoin, up nearly 3%. Gold down a tad. Again, that'll be one to watch what happens with that inflation number. And oil is up 1.5%. So what often happens when the market gets beat up in expectations, becomes a dud, right? So you get all that algo move straight after the number. As I've already said, the market's already thin. It's even thinner as they drop out. So be careful of the first few moves. Overnight, we had a bunch of earnings, and there, if you want to go ahead and look at the wrap we did after the market yesterday, that covers most of that. So go ahead and do that. I won't bore you with that. We're going to actually start off with oil and gas this morning, and we're going to look a little bit at volume profile on that. Market profile is also a good way to look at markets that are heavily traded. If you think back to when they were pit traded, so the POCs and the virgin POCs are very evident. We combine that. This is more for day trading. We combine that with, and I'm going to put that up here, we combine that with your pivots. So you can see, if you look at the heavy, that's your POC as a general rule, volume profile, but it's going to be this red mark. So here we are coming into New York session for oil, and you can see what's going on. I'm going to blow that up. One thing you should notice, I've kept this wide for a reason, is you can see that most markets square up. You'll get the odd one here where you'll get two heavy volumes. And often if we were to look at that, that would be a news day. But let's widen this. So this is where we are now. And you can see that we ran up. Remember, this is, if we go back to our normal chart in a minute, we came from 162 all the way up to 173. We've been consolidating in the same patterns on the S&P. We've been consolidating in this flag. Remember, a lot of people, as I said, it's kind of the sheeple. I kind of find it amusing. The same people that were about to lose their lunch this time last Friday are now claiming to have picked it all, and they go on with whatnot. So keep that in mind. Be very wary of those that are espousing that. So anyway, we have this here, and you can see what we're looking at today. So we're actually above our expected profile. So we get above that, then you then go what's called a virgin POC. That's just, remember, most people psychologically, 85-90% of people are happy to break even. So they tend to carry their bigger losses and aim for the profit. So that's why that works. So we're well above here. So this would have been what we're looking at right here, 71.20. We're trading at 71.80. You can see the cloud is coming up here, but I really just wanted to show you that this range. So we will look at that during the day. That's useful live. But so think of that volume profile. It's kind of like what we're about to see here on the pivots. Is think of them as like a handbrake. So look where we are, and these numbers are relevant because we're about to have a number that can move the market. So here we can remember over here was our volume profile. So it's taking all the volume, putting it into price, which works well, that ideology, with time and price that we use on other markets. So you can see we're coming up on a 30-minute basis. We're actually, and that's the other thing, it's important to recognize what time frame to use your cloud. We have a shorter one here because we're about to come into a number. So you can see all this work overnight has left us right here. And interestingly, the last few days we've been starting off at the Tenkan pivot. Today we're above the pivot. So the pivot being 71.34, and it's $1 above there, 72.30 for R1. And S1 is way down here at 69.58. Remember, we had those big couple of days at the start of the week, so the volume's still rebalancing from that. So simple, and for charting, very simple. Algorithms work on math. They run 80% of the market, and most people are followers. So just have simple trend lines to see where you think value is going to be. You can look at options, look at open interest, which is what we call the gamma level. In other words, where everyone is. What you're seeing a lot of stuff on the internet, people tend to throw around all the Greeks to make yourself, I guess, sound a little bit bigger than what they are, but just understand what it is. Keep it simple. That's where everyone is. Very simply, we've come back and tested the breakdown level. See that? Remember, everyone tries to get even, and the market en masse does that. Okay, one more here. We're just going to look a little bit longer. This is a 240, and this looks a little bit different. If we can see all that breaking up we were seeing on the other chart, look at this potential of what they call a reverse head and shoulders or a cup and handle. So if we were to draw a line, let's find my line here, across here, we've got all this resistance, right, coming in here, that if we get above this, we can go higher. But we're going to need some impulse, which could be a CPI number, or a false break. So in other words, if it's a soft CPI, this could go the other way, and then they bring it up. So just remember that. A spit is very powerful, a false break. So we are sitting, as we go into 240, right at our 50 moving average, right? So, and right at our Tenkan, so everything's come in right before this big number, okay? So we're going to watch that. That's 73, and on the downside, we've got all this below us, right? So if you are short, you know where to have your protection. Finally, daily. Let's get rid of that. Finally, on the daily, you can see the same pattern there, right? Remember, we've been watching This is either A, B, C complete, 5 waves down, and we're going back up. The question is of degree, meaning is this an A, right? It's like A, B, C. We can do the same pattern as on the S&P. So see this, 1, 2, 3. Is this a 1, 2, and we're going a lot higher, or are we correcting this move, right? Okay, let's have a quick look at natural gas. Not a lot to see here. Here's our value, our profile. Look at this. You can see the market's still very heavy. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days since this big collapse. Remember that gap down consistently? Remember that was on a weather change, so warmer weather. We also had a market that was heavy speculative long. And we talked yesterday how about every natural gas settlement for quite a while. It's been quite the sell-off on the prompt or the front end. So we have this sideways. We don't need to spend too much there. If we come overnight, we will get our levels. You can see we're just above the pivot. We're resting on the cloud here. This is 10 minutes, so we can look at. Look how far away. They look massively away, right? But we've gone sideways. So this whole move is 20 cents either way, which would be a big move in this environment. So just keep those levels in mind. What you need to get at, the reason a chart is just to see visually, we have basically gone sideways for 5 weeks. 5 days, sorry. And so you need to look at the curve. On 4 hours, you can see that. Look at that. So it gives you a bigger picture of that pennant. And look at this gap here and this gap here. There's a lot of length hoping for this gap. At some point, it should get in there. But look at, we're going to, very simple on this one, you're going to draw a pennant, right? So you got your line there, your line there. Pennants are generally, 80% of the time, they're going to be a continuation pattern, which doesn't augur well for natural gas to go. So typically that'll break down, but you got the gap above here. So perhaps you get a false break, fill that, and down. Just keep it open. You know your levels that we just went through. Okay, so that's a difficult one, and that's why the market's sideways. And if we look at the daily, look at that. Very beautiful technically. If you look at our longer term on our report we do every week, this was a big double top from years back. So 1, 2, 3 waves, right? So this was either a major top, this level here, or, you know, I know the end of the world people are looking at $12 US gas, etc. But let's be real, that would take quite the effort. That would mean this would be a 1, an A, B, this would be a C, correcting all this move, which we keep that option alive. But let's trade at the market. You got that gap there we just saw, right? So very clinical. The Tenkan Sand at a daily level is all the way up at 422. As far as the Chico goes, look, all in balance. Okay, let's go back and look. So that should give us a good overview. Any questions? Drop us a line. Good morning, Nick. Thanks for tuning in. Good to see you. So let's go over S&P real quick. It's much like oil. That's what I wanted to start off. Almost the same pattern, yeah? Look at this. Same thing on an hourly, right? Except a little bit more selling. We pressured that. So we got this downtrend here pushing at the top of the cloud, which is right now around 4 yeah, at 90, I believe. Yeah. 690 there. Remember, so again, we want to look at the SPX to thin everything out, smoother than the SPY or the S&P future when we're charting. Just gives you a cleaner line. You can see this whole move, perfect pennant. That's our breakup. We held that. We talked about that yesterday. So that's basically our trading was selling around here, buying around here. We had looked like a few false breaks. So we're going to keep it simple today as well. Then use your Murray maths for upside. Downside's clear, back inside the channel. You will start using the channel again. That falls daily. The tanking that we're big on, whoops, is all the way down here now. Remember that? Held it. Finally broke it, and up we get. If you could recall where it was at the time, right? So it got back. It's almost a perfect fractal, right? The difference, so here we're green. We start off green here today. So that's the little things you want to watch. The 28% that I put on that really big bull move, the bull move of insanity, whatever you want to call it, would be if this all breaks, you target, very simply, you measure it, where it breaks from to the top to the bottom, right? So that's about 200 handles above here. That's your bull. Your bear, you got all this down here to retest, which would be a much healthier market, okay? We got the same situation on Nasdaq and the Russell immediately, except they're much weaker versions. The Russell is a much weaker version, and you think what that is. Apple, let's have a quick look at Apple. Apple's pretty well been the driver of this. When you compare that to the Russell really weak, which was really the weak side of it, where a lot of speculators are. This tanking is what you want to watch. On the 4 hour, if you're using Ichimoku, remember, understand what that means. And very simply, you have a look at that trend line. Now, we talk about pumping stocks. This has been the most ultimate pump I've seen for a while. We had 3 days back-to-back of major banks upgrading Apple, right? What do you think that was about? Knowing it would influence the market. Not that I'm cynical. Okay. Nvidia trying to bounce down here. We went through oil and gas. Here's our volume profile for the SPOOs. Remember how I've got this a little bit wider for you, but you can see here where all the volume was yesterday. So think about your POC. Where we're trading right now is the high end of that. See, we closed at the high end here, so that fed that, right? So just look at that range, compare that to your other, just keep it simple. It's all maps. So we just look at that, pivots, and you have your chart. Okay, well, you got your CPI coming out. As far as news, not a lot other than that. Let me see really quickly here. The market's been, the US president, unusually, though Trump used to do the same sort of thing. I guess that's the modern era. He's been talking up this inflation number. Is he doing it to say, oh, it's not as bad, or is he getting the market ready for it? But remember, inflation report is backward looking, so that will become evident very quickly once the market looks into it. We've had all the energy markets come off quite a degree. We had a procedural vote yesterday that passed as far as the debt ceiling goes. And there is a vote on that in both houses, I believe, today. That is about it from us. Enjoy it. The day, we will post the stocks we're looking at, etc. On the website there. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Like us, share us, all that good stuff on YouTube. Have a blessed weekend. Enjoy your family after today. Remember, be wary of false breaks. Have your own opinion. Be wary of what your Twitterverse and your Reddit rooms and all that are saying. Remember, half these people are either not really traders, they're spilling something, or they're trying to get something happening to suit their position. Again, I'm in a cynical, sarcastic mood today. That's a healthy way to be. Enjoy. Charge up on your coffee.